In the heart of a raging flood, where hope seemed all but lost, a wild Mustang battled for his life, and just when the world expected him to disappear beneath the relentless waters, an unlikely hero emerged from the storm to change everything. As dusk settled over the vast expanse of the Western Valley, a calm hush seemed to fall across the landscape. The sky was painted with the soft hues of fading sunlight, casting long shadows that stretched like gentle fingers over the rolling plains. The river, which had long been the lifeblood of this land, whispered quietly as it meandered through the fertile soil, its waters shimmering under the last golden rays of the day. Among the wild inhabitants of this untamed terrain, Midnight the Black Mustang, with a coat that gleamed like polished obsidian, grazed peacefully near the riverbank. For years, Midnight had roamed these lands, a symbol of unyielding freedom and resilience. He had evaded capture, outrun men on horseback, and endured the harshest seasons nature had to offer. His spirit was as wild and untamed as the valley itself, and his heart beat with the rhythm of the earth beneath his hooves. But nature in all its beauty holds a duality, a force that can be as nurturing as it is merciless. As the sun dipped lower, the atmosphere shifted subtly. The gentle rain that had begun as a mere sprinkle intensified, growing heavier, the soft patter evolving into a steady drumming on the leaves and soil. Midnight lifted his head, ears twitching as he sensed the change, but the calm was deceptive. Within the hour, the skies darkened ominously, heavy clouds rolling in like a vast wave of shadows swallowing the fading light. The rain transformed from a benign drizzle into a relentless torrent, a violent downpour that drenched the valley with unyielding force. The river, once a placid stream, responded with equal ferocity. It swelled rapidly, its waters rising beyond the familiar banks, tearing through the landscape with an unforgiving hunger. What had been dry, sprawling plains became a vast, churning sea of mud and debris. Trees that had stood sentinel for decades bent and snapped under the flood's power, their roots torn free and sent adrift. Fences disintegrated, floating helplessly in the muddy waters, remnants of human order swallowed by the wild chaos. The valley was transformed into a battleground where man, beast, and nature were humbled beneath the torrent's wrath. Midnight's senses sharpened as the earth beneath his feet trembled. The ground near the riverbank, saturated and unstable, began to crumble. Before he could react, the soil gave way beneath him, plunging him into the icy, roiling waters. The Mustang was caught in a sudden, merciless grip, swept away by the flood's violent currents. His powerful legs kicked frantically, attempting to grasp at anything solid, but the swirling debris and forceful water mocked his efforts. Branches and logs hurtled past, some colliding with his flanks and chest, each blow a reminder of the peril he faced. The cold pierced deep, seeping into his muscles and bones, sapping his strength with cruel efficiency. Despite the overwhelming odds, Midnight's spirit refused to yield. Each breath was a struggle against the choking water and the fatigue that threatened to pull him under. His hooves pounded the air in desperate defiance, his eyes wide and wild, filled with both terror and an unbroken will to survive. In these moments, the Mustang became a living testament to the primal fight for life, a creature alone yet undaunted in the face of nature's fury. The night descended, fully cloaking the valley in darkness that was thick with rain and turmoil. Midnight's battle against the flood continued without pause. Hours stretched like an eternity, every second marked by the relentless surge of the waters and the pounding of his heart. The cold became a living entity, a slow and insidious force that seeped into his very being, threatening to extinguish the fire of his life. Yet the wild horse pressed on, driven by instincts forged in the crucible of freedom and survival. In this crucible, the valley itself became a silent witness to the fragile dance between life and death. The floodwaters, indifferent and unyielding, carved a new path through the land, erasing the familiar and forcing the wild and the free to confront the raw power of existence. Midnight was more than a horse. He was a symbol of endurance, a creature caught between the gentle embrace of the earth and the violent upheaval of the storm. As dawn threatened to break through the lingering storm clouds, the valley lay transformed. The floodwaters still raged, but in the midst of the devastation, Midnight's fierce struggle had not been in vain. Though battered and exhausted, he remained alive, a testament to the wild spirit that refuses to be broken, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Jake Miller sat in the driver's seat of his old pickup truck, hands clenched tightly around the worn steering wheel. The rain hammered relentlessly against the windshield, each drop blurring his vision as the storm raged on. The once familiar valley around him was drowning under a blanket of dark, swirling water, transforming roads into rivers and pastures into isolated islands. Every part of the landscape bore the scars of the flood's merciless assault. Jake's gaze was heavy, weighed down, not just by the storm outside, but by the memories and burdens he carried within. Once Jake had been a man defined by action and courage, a soldier deployed to distant battlefields, a firefighter racing into infernos. He had known danger, intimately saving lives in moments when seconds meant the difference between hope and despair. Yet those years had left their mark. The faces of those he couldn't save haunted him, and the endless cycle of sacrifice wore down his spirit. Now seeking peace, he had retreated to the quiet of this valley, hoping to leave behind the chaos of his past. But peace was elusive. The valley's flood mirrored the turmoil inside him, the water rising, unstoppable and wild. The radio crackled with warnings of danger, but Jake sat in silence, teeth clenched, absorbing the storm's fury without reaction. The weight of his experiences, the ghosts of his past, made him want to turn away from any more suffering, any more rescue. Then through the sheets of rain, a movement caught his eye, a desperate struggle in the floodwaters. At first he thought it was debris, a fallen branch tossed by the current. But the shape moved with intent, a flicker of life fighting against nature's wrath. It was Midnight, the black Mustang, barely keeping his head above water, fighting to survive in a world that seemed determined to swallow him whole. Jake's breath caught his heart pounding in his chest. For a moment, the walls he had built around himself trembled. The instinct to turn away warred with something deeper, a compassion that refused to be silenced. He knew too well what it meant to be caught in a battle for survival, to feel the desperate pull between hope and despair. Memories surged forward, flames licking at his skin, cries for help echoing in smoky rooms, the weight of loss pressing down like a stone. He had vowed never to step into that chaos again, to find refuge in solitude and silence. But now, looking at Midnight's struggling figure, something in him stirred, breaking through the fog of pain. With a sudden resolve, Jake slammed his foot on the accelerator. The tires churned through the flooded road water, spraying in wild arcs as the truck fought the flood's force. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel, jaw clenched tight, but his eyes were fixed on the desperate black shape ahead. The world outside was a blur of dark water and driving rain, but Jake's focus was unshakable. Every step toward Midnight was a step back into the life he thought he had left behind. The cold floodwaters rose icy and unforgiving, reaching his waist as he stepped out of the truck. The current tugged at him like a living thing, threatening to drag him down. His boots slipped against the muddy ground beneath, every moment a test of balance and strength. But Jake pressed forward, each breath a battle against the cold that seeped into his bones. Midnight's eyes met his wide with fear and exhaustion, yet shimmering with a flicker of hope. The connection between man and horse was silent but profound. Two beings caught in a crucible of survival, each drawing strength from the other. Pain lanced through Jake's ribs as a sudden kick from Midnight landed hard, but he refused to falter. Every step closer was a victory, every heartbeat a declaration that surrender was not an option. His muscles burned, lungs gasped, but his spirit burned brighter than the storm that threatened to consume them. In the chaos of the flood, Jake felt something long buried awaken, the raw, fierce determination that had once defined him. The fear that had held him prisoner began to dissolve in the face of a purpose greater than his pain. This was not just a rescue, it was a reclaiming of himself. As the river roared around them, carrying debris and destruction, Jake found an unexpected clarity. The floodwaters that threatened to drown Midnight also washed away the walls Jake had built around his heart. In the desperate fight against the storm, he discovered a courage that had never truly left him, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit when faced with the wild and untamable forces of nature. Each moment spent battling the elements was a step toward healing, a quiet reminder that sometimes salvation comes not from running away, but from facing the storm head-on with compassion and unyielding resolve. Jake's journey was no longer just about survival. It was about rediscovering the strength to hope, to care, and to live again. In the relentless flood, amid the raging water and the pounding rain, Jake Miller had found his calling once more, not as a man broken by his past, but as a guardian of life, a beacon of steadfast courage amid the chaos. And as he moved forward to save Midnight, He stepped toward a future where both could emerge from the storm stronger, bound by the unspoken promise of second chances. Jake Miller plunged into the icy floodwaters without hesitation, the cold biting through his clothes and chilling him to the bone. The relentless current clawed at his legs, trying to pull him under as he fought to reach Midnight, who was barely staying afloat. The wild Mustang's eyes reflected panic and exhaustion, but also an unbroken spirit, a fierce determination to survive despite the overwhelming odds. Jake's heart pounded with urgency. This was no ordinary rescue, but a battle against nature's raw fury, where every second counted. The river's current was unforgiving, a swirling mass of debris and mud that twisted and turned unpredictably. Jake's boots struck submerged branches and tangled roots, each step a struggle against the powerful forces dragging him downstream. His muscles screamed with effort, and icy water numbed his fingers as he extended his arms to grasp the struggling horse. Midnight thrashed wildly, his powerful hooves striking out in desperation, his body battered by the relentless assault of logs and debris. A sudden sharp kick from Midnight slammed into Jake's ribs, the force stealing his breath and sending him staggering backward. Pain flared through his chest, but there was no time to falter. Jake steadied himself, swallowing the sting and pressing onward. He knew that if he hesitated, both he and Midnight could be lost to the flood's merciless grip. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jake managed to reach the Mustang's mane, his fingers tangled in the wet, slippery hair. Midnight's breathing was ragged, his body trembling with exhaustion and cold, but there was still a flicker of life. Jake wrapped his arms securely around the horse's powerful neck, anchoring him against the pull of the water. The bond between man and beast, forged in the crucible of survival, became a lifeline. Together they fought the raging flood, inching toward a cluster of partially submerged trees, the only refuge in a sea of chaos. Jake's arms burned with the strain of holding Midnight upright against the current, his breath coming in sharp gasps. Every moment was a test of endurance, every movement a victory over the overwhelming force of nature. The water swirled violently around them, pulling at Jake's feet and dragging debris in threatening eddies. Broken fence posts floated like brittle twigs, dead branches spun in whirlpools, and the distant roar of the flood echoed like a relentless drumbeat. Amidst the destruction, Jake's determination never wavered. He knew that surrender was not an option, not for him, not for Midnight. At one point, a massive log barreled toward them with terrifying speed. Jake barely had time to react, yanking Midnight sideways just as the log slammed into the water beside them, sending a freezing wave crashing over their heads. Midnight screamed, rearing up wildly and breaking free from Jake's grip. For a terrifying moment, the horse vanished beneath the turbulent surface. Jake lunged after him without hesitation, plunging into the icy depths. The cold was unbearable, the water swirling around him like a dark, suffocating shroud. His body was tossed and twisted by the river's wrath, his lungs screaming for air as he fought to locate Midnight beneath the surface. Then through the haze of water and fear, he felt the familiar brush of wet fur against his fingers. Grasping the horse's mane once more, Jake fought against the current, pulling them both toward the surface. The struggle was desperate and exhausting, but finally they broke through the water's grip. Gasping and coughing, Jake dragged Midnight's head above the floodwaters, desperate to keep the horse breathing. Midnight was motionless, his eyes half closed, his body limp from exhaustion. Jake's heart pounded with fear and hope intertwined. He wrapped his arms around the Mustang, shielding him from the cold and steadying their fragile connection to life. Slowly, the horse let out a trembling breath, a flicker of life that rekindled Jake's determination. With the last of his strength, Jake pulled them toward a narrow patch of solid ground, a small rise barely visible above the floodwaters. Every step was agonizing, his body numb and trembling, but he refused to stop. Midnight's legs trembled beneath him, his breath shallow and uneven, yet he followed Jake's lead, each movement a testament to resilience. They collapsed together against the base of an ancient oak tree, both drenched and battered, but alive. The storm's roar softened to a distant murmur as the first light of dawn broke through the clouds. Jake's fingers trembled as he ran a gentle hand over Midnight's slick, muddy coat, feeling the faint warmth of life beneath the surface. In that quiet moment, the bond forged through the harrowing rescue deepened into something unbreakable. Jake saw in Midnight not just a wild horse, but a mirror of his own struggle, both battered by life's storms, yet refusing to surrender. The floodwaters had threatened to claim them, but together they had fought back, finding strength in shared hardship. As Jake caught his breath, pain radiated from his bruised ribs and aching muscles, reminders of the battle they had endured. Yet the exhaustion was tempered by an overwhelming sense of purpose. This rescue was more than an act of survival. It was a testament to the resilience of the human and the wild spirit, a story of trust and hope, born in the depths of adversity. Though the flood still raged around them, Jake and Midnight had found a moment of refuge, a fragile sanctuary amidst the chaos. And as the valley slowly began to awaken, with the promise of a new day, so too did their journey toward healing and renewal. The trials they had faced had forged a bond beyond words, a silent understanding that would carry them through the challenges yet to come. In the heart of that storm, amidst the swirling waters and relentless fury, Jake Miller and Midnight stood united not just as rescuer and rescued, but as survivors bound by courage, compassion, and the unyielding will to live. Jake Miller and Midnight lay side by side on the narrow strip of solid ground, their bodies heavy with exhaustion, yet warmed by the fragile promise of survival. The relentless storm that had ravaged the valley was beginning to ease the angry floodwaters, slowly receding, but the memories of the night's struggle remained vivid and raw. Each ragged breath they drew was a testament to their endurance, a silent acknowledgement of the ordeal they had survived together. Jake's muscles ached deeply, the bruises and cuts a physical map of the battle he had fought against both nature and his own limitations. His ribs throbbed painfully where Midnight's desperate kick had landed. Yet in the quiet that followed the storm's fury, Jake found a strange sense of peace. The rawness of his wounds mirrored the emotional scars he carried from years of sacrifice and loss. But here in the presence of the wild Mustang, those wounds began to feel less isolating. Midnight's coat, slick and matted with mud, rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. The black horse's sharp ribs were a stark reminder of his ordeal, yet in his dark eyes burned a flicker of resilience. He was no longer the untouchable symbol of wild freedom Jake had once known. He was a survivor marked by pain and hardship, bound now to a man who had risked everything to save him. As Jake reached out his hand, trembling slightly, he placed it gently on Midnight's shoulder. The horse didn't flinch. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them, a mutual recognition of the lives they had fought to preserve the trust forged in the crucible of desperation. Jake realized then that Midnight was no longer just a wild creature of the valley. He was a companion, a reflection of Jake's own journey through darkness toward hope. The storm had stripped away the illusions of solitude Jake had clung to for so long. The years he had spent running from responsibility and pain now seemed distant, overshadowed by the immediacy of the bond formed in those harrowing hours. Midnight's presence was a balm to Jake's wounded spirit, a living testament to the power of resilience and connection. Despite the physical toll, Jake's mind began to clear, thoughts turning toward what lay ahead. The valley was forever changed, so were they. The floodwaters had carved new paths, uprooted familiar landmarks, and reshaped the landscape, much like the experience had reshaped Jake's understanding of himself. The battle for survival had forged a new purpose, a calling that transcended the simple act of rescue. Slowly, Jake pushed himself to a sitting position, muscles protesting with every movement. He looked down at Midnight, who shifted weakly, but met his gaze with steady eyes. The bond between them was unspoken, but undeniable, a bridge spanning the divide between man and beast, pain and healing. Jake knew that the days ahead would be challenging. Midnight's wounds needed care, and the horse would require time to recover, both physically and emotionally. But beyond that, Jake sensed a deeper journey unfolding, a chance not only to nurse the Mustang back to health, but to confront his own demons, to heal from wounds far older and more invisible. The valley's silence was punctuated only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant murmur of the receding floodwaters. It was a quiet that felt sacred, a moment suspended between past suffering and future possibility. Here in the aftermath of chaos, Jake found clarity. Life, with all its unpredictability and pain, also offered renewal and hope. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the cloud cover, illuminating the valley with a soft golden light, Jake rose slowly, steadying himself. He tightened his grip on the makeshift lead still wrapped around Midnight's chest, the symbol of their shared struggle and mutual dependence. The horse rose unsteadily, muscles trembling, but determined to stand. Together, they began the slow walk toward a new beginning. Each step was tentative, marked by fatigue and uncertainty, but also by a quiet resolve. The journey ahead was unknown, but Jake no longer faced it alone. Midnight's presence was a reminder that survival was not just about enduring hardship, it was about finding connection, purpose, and ultimately healing. In the days that followed, Jake and Midnight would navigate the challenges of recovery, both physical and spiritual. The valley would continue to heal from the flood's devastation, just as they would heal from their shared ordeal. Their bond, born in the crucible of the storm, would grow stronger, a testament to the enduring power of resilience and compassion. Jake often reflected on the night they survived the flood, recognizing it as a turning point, a moment when courage overcame fear, when compassion broke through isolation, and when two lives so different yet intertwined found hope in the face of despair. Midnight, once a symbol of wild freedom, had become a companion on a path toward redemption. And Jake, once haunted by loss and retreat, had rediscovered a purpose that gave meaning to his pain. Their story was not just one of survival against the odds, but a profound reminder that even amidst life's fiercest storms, healing and hope remain within reach for those willing to embrace them. As they moved forward together, Jake and Midnight carried with them the lessons of the flood, the strength born of adversity, the power of trust, and the unbreakable bonds forged in the darkest hours. Their journey was a beacon of resilience, a story of new beginnings that spoke to the enduring spirit of life itself. The story of Jake Miller and Midnight is not merely a recount of a daring rescue amidst a devastating flood. It is a profound exploration of human resilience, the intricate dance between vulnerability and strength, and the transformative power that emerges when two souls, one human and one wild, find hope in the face of overwhelming adversity. Their journey weaves together the raw force of nature and the equally formidable spirit of endurance, illustrating timeless truths that resonate far beyond the boundaries of that flood-ravaged valley. Jake Miller entered the valley as a man burdened by the scars of his past. A soldier and firefighter, he had faced the harshest extremes of life, witnessing firsthand the fragile boundary between survival and loss. Years of bearing witness to tragedy had etched deep wounds within him, wounds invisible to the eye but ever present in his soul. He had sought refuge in solitude, hoping to escape the ghosts of those he could not save, and the haunting memories of a life spent on the front lines of danger. The valley, with its quiet beauty and distant mountains, promised peace, a chance to forget, to heal, and to simply exist without the weight of responsibility pressing down on his shoulders. Yet peace is often elusive, especially when the storm arrives. And not just the physical storm, but the internal tempest that rages within us all when confronted with loss, fear, and uncertainty. The floodwaters that engulfed the valley mirrored Jake's internal chaos, unpredictable, overwhelming, and relentless. As he watched the waters rise, threatening to erase the life and land he had come to cherish, Jake found himself facing a familiar crossroads: to retreat into silence or to rise and fight. It was in this moment of profound crisis that Jake's compassion stirred awake. The sight of Midnight, the black Mustang struggling desperately against the flood's unforgiving current, broke through the layers of pain and fear that had encased him. The horse's battle for survival was a mirror reflecting Jake's own struggle. A wild, untamed spirit fighting against forces that sought to extinguish it. This recognition sparked something deep within Jake, a call to courage that transcended his personal anguish. Jake's decision to wade into the freezing floodwaters was a turning point, not only in the rescue of a wild horse, but in the reclaiming of his own life. His leap into the storm was a leap of faith in the power of connection and the human capacity to overcome fear through acts of selflessness and bravery. The flood, which sought to drown Midnight and swallow the valley, became the arena where Jake rediscovered the strength that had long lain dormant within him. Midnight, for his part, was the embodiment of a wild resilience. The Mustang had lived a life defined by freedom and survival, yet nothing had prepared him for the merciless flood that threatened to end his existence. His struggle was not just against the rising waters, but against despair itself, the challenge to hold on to life when every element seemed aligned to take it away. Midnight's fierce determination, his unwillingness to give in, reminds us all that survival is as much about spirit as it is about strength. It is about the refusal to surrender, even when the odds are impossibly stacked against us. Together, Jake and Midnight forged a bond that was as much about healing as it was about survival. The rescue became a crucible in which two wounded souls found trust, hope, and renewal. Their shared ordeal illuminated the profound truth that connection between human and animal, between individuals facing hardship, is a powerful source of strength. It teaches us that in our most vulnerable moments, when the floodwaters rise in our own lives, it is often the relationships we nurture that keep us afloat. From their story emerge vital lessons that speak to the core of our human experience, especially in an age marked by uncertainty and rapid change. The first lesson is the indomitable nature of resilience. Life's floods, be they physical, emotional, or spiritual, are inevitable. They test our limits, shake our foundations, and challenge our will. But like Jake and Midnight, we have within us the capacity to endure, to adapt, and to emerge from adversity stronger and wiser. Resilience is not the absence of struggle, but the courage to continue despite it. It is cultivated through perseverance, through the quiet decisions made in moments of despair, and through the belief that tomorrow holds promise. The second lesson is the transformative power of compassion. Jake's initial hesitation, born of pain and fear, gave way to an act of radical empathy. This shift illustrates a profound truth: reaching out to others, even when it requires confronting our own vulnerabilities, is a path to healing. Compassion binds us, creating bridges where walls once stood. It reminds us that our shared humanity is a wellspring of hope, and that acts of kindness and courage ripple far beyond the immediate moment. Third, the story underscores the theme of redemption and renewal. Both Jake and Midnight carry the marks of their past wounds and scars that shape their identities. Yet through their shared struggle, they find a new beginning. This offers a powerful reminder that no matter the weight of our histories, there is always room for growth and transformation. Life's storms, while painful, can serve as catalysts for profound change, opening doors to possibilities we never imagined. Applying these lessons to our own lives invites a deliberate and thoughtful approach to the challenges we face. Building resilience means embracing the struggle, seeking support, and nurturing hope even when circumstances seem bleak. It calls for patience with ourselves and recognition of our inner strength. Cultivating compassion encourages us to extend grace, to listen deeply, to offer help without judgment, and to build communities grounded in understanding and care. Embracing redemption asks us to forgive past mistakes, to learn from them, and to courageously step into the future with openness and intention. For the audience, Jake and Midnight's story is more than an inspiring narrative. It is a call to action. It asks us to look within and recognize our own capacity for courage. It encourages us to reach out to those struggling, to build connections that heal and uplift. It challenges us to face life's floods with unwavering resolve and to see each trial as an opportunity for renewal. If this story has moved you, if it has sparked a flame of hope or courage within your heart, then we invite you to join our community. By subscribing to this channel, you become part of a collective journey, a space where stories of resilience, compassion, and transformation are shared and celebrated. Your support fuels the creation of more meaningful content that inspires and empowers, stories that remind us all of the strength and beauty found in survival and connection. Together, let us face our storms, lift one another, and step boldly toward new beginnings. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for standing with us. Subscribe now and be part of a movement toward hope, healing, and the enduring power of the human spirit.